Hello and welcome to week 5, module 5, where we start talking about pedagogical knowledge. So we started talking about pedagogical knowledge a bit last week in discussing assessment. Now we're ready to move on to stage 3, where we talk about how we actually implement our lesson plans. We've established what our goals are, initial goals with our standards and with our behavioral objectives and the enduring understandings and the essential questions that established our goals, where we want to get to. So if I use a metaphor like a vacation, we planned our destination. Then we decided on the landmarks that would tell us whether or not we've reached our destination. With our assessments, how are we going to know whether our objectives have been met? Have we taught them the standards that we've been trusted to teach them? Finally, it's time to plan our route. It's time to decide how we're going to get where we're going. And that happens in stage 3, and we base that on we base it on our pedagogical content knowledge, which I'll get into in just a minute. But we're going to draw from the strategies that are held within our pedagogical knowledge. That's what we're going to be talking about today, some specific research-based strategies and models that we can follow in the lesson planning process. So how do we make those decisions? How do we apply the right strategy to the specific context for a specific content we're teaching? Well, as you know, we use our pedagogical content knowledge. Pedagogical content knowledge draws from our knowledge of the content and the pedagogical strategies that we have and where those come together. In order to make good decisions, good pedagogical decisions based on solid pedagogical content knowledge, well, we better have a lot of options, right? If you only know 5 different teaching strategies, well, you teach 180 days and you teach a variety of different classes each day, that's going to get a little bit repetitive if you don't have a variety of strategies to draw from. And you won't always be picking the best tool for the job if you don't have a wide array of tools to pick from. So one of the goals this week, one of my objectives this week, is to expose you to a wide variety of different teaching strategies that are research-based and can improve student engagement and student learning, ultimately getting us to our desired learning goals, our desired results. So let's look at what I'm going to have you do. You can read the overview. It's going to include most of what I'm saying right now. And the learning outcomes, as I said, we're going to be exploring a variety of different models and strategies and applying those to the unit that we're in the process of designing. Let's look at the readings. You'll notice that the readings that are listed here are all out of textbooks, so they are not posted readings. If you open that reading and study, you're going to find a description of what I'm telling you right now and the lecture video, but no PDFs of articles because they're all out of the text. First, you're going to be reading Chapter 4, everybody, math and science both, are going to be reading Chapter 4 of the Egan textbook. That chapter describes a few different strategies regarding... Let me see. I want to make sure that I'm quoting it correctly. So, strategies regarding group work, cooperative learning, and discussions. How to best implement those particular techniques into your class. You will, based on that reading, be selecting one strategy that's outlined in that chapter. And I'm going to allow you some leeway in the scope of what all you want to include in what a strategy is. And you're going to summarize that in the discussion board under assignments. So that's this discussion board, Egan Strategies Summary. You will also be perusing chapters 5 through 10, but you only have to read one of those in substantial detail. If you go to assignments, the top assignment says Table of Model Summaries. We're going to be filling in this table. You should see your name next to one of these teaching models. Those models are outlined one to a chapter in the Egan chapters 5 through 10. So each chapter describes one specific model for lesson plan design. It's a way of framing a lesson based on the research-based strategies that we're talking about this week. So you'll choose the one, I guess not choose, you'll be assigned one of those, and you'll read it. You're going to fill in the columns next to your name on that table. And here's one that's partially filled in from some previous work that I've done. The same set of columns that you're going to be working with this week. So the models are over here: guided discovery, concept attainment, integrative model, problem-based learning, directed instruction, and lecture discussion. You're going to be, based on your reading, based on what you find from the chapter, describing the characteristics of that model. So what makes that model unique as compared to the other models that are provided? What makes a guided discovery model a guided discovery model? What is the defining characteristics of that model in particular? What is the structure of that model? If you're implementing this model in your class, what's it going to look like? The chapters provide a set of stages or steps that the model is going to incorporate. Within the model, what is the teacher's role? You as the teacher fill a different role depending on the type of lesson that you're teaching. Are you a facilitator and guide? Or are you a lecturer? Are you providing the knowledge? Are you providing an expert point of view? Are you moderating a debate? These can all be descriptors for the teacher's role. At the same time, the students will be fulfilling a role. Are they active participants in the STEM process, or are they passive recipients of information? Are they experimental designers? And these can all be roles that the student fill depending on the model that you're implementing. Power distance. Now, this one's probably new for you. This is a term that was coined by, I believe, by Lisa Delpit, an educational researcher. If not coined by her, at least used by her in her research. If you have the opportunity, we might be reading an excerpt from her next week. But if not, I would recommend the works of Lisa Delpit in terms of equity and diversity in education. She's done a lot of amazing work. So that's a side note. But what is this term? What does power distance mean? Power distance is the disparity in control between teacher and student. In a teacher-centered classroom, the power lies with the teacher. The teacher controls the lecture, the pace, the content being covered. The control lies firmly in the realm of the teacher. In an open inquiry lesson, the power tends to be more evenly distributed, where the teacher might guide the process, but the students have control over the pacing, the means of addressing the problems that are presented. So the power distance in a very teacher-centered classroom is going to be large. The power distance in a very student-centered classroom is going to be pretty small, where the students have more say and more control. And the purpose of the lesson model. So this is the big one. The purpose is where you would apply this, when you would apply this, what you would use this model for. Each model has strengths and weaknesses. You might want to include those in that column as well, because the strengths and the weaknesses determine when this is a good model to use and when it's perhaps not a good model to use. So the direct instruction model follows an I do, we do, you do progression. And that's not always the best tool for the job. So the purpose is, when is it the best tool for the job? When do you want to use this type of lesson? So we're doing this so that you can focus on one, gain expertise in one, but then be exposed to and learn about all of them through the work of your peers. Okay, so that's the Egan chapters 5 through 10. You'll also be reading, if you're a 602 student, you'll be reading chapters 1 through 3 in your What Successful Math Teachers Do textbook. That those 3 chapters, that reading, outlines a wide variety of different strategies. Now, these authors, they're describing strategies a little differently than what you've read in the Egan textbook. They're presenting them in a somewhat broader framework, but they still provide you with an insightful way of framing your understanding of what teaching strategies you're going to want to use in the classroom. And there's a lot of them. In each textbook, there's quite a few. I don't know exactly how many in each, but there's a lot to choose from. What I'd like you to do, based on your readings from, in 602, you're going to be reading the Posimeter. In 603, you'll be reading the Glasgow, What Successful Science Teachers Do. And you're going to choose 5 of the strategies that are outlined in those 3 chapters and summarize them in a discussion board. That would be this discussion board right here for your peers. And you'll also be responding to your peers' comments. That way you're going to be exposed to not just the 5 that you've done, but the 5 of each of the peers that you're going to be responding to. All right, that's all the readings, so let's jump into these assignments. I've already talked a bit about them, but I want to make sure that I don't miss any of the details. The model summary table will take you to the Google Doc, like I showed you before. The 2 strategy summary discussion boards. The first one from the Egan text, you'll choose one strategy outlined in Chapter 4. The same criteria apply to the readings from your What Successful Teachers Do Chapters 1 through 3 readings. You'll choose 5 strategies in those readings and summarize those 5. A solid paragraph for each strategy that you choose, providing a description of the or a summary of the author's descriptions and your own thoughts and interpretation of what they're talking about. So putting it in your own words. Make sure that you are providing that for 5 strategies and then responding to at least 2 classmates' posts. So ideally, you're going to see 5 from your own research and 10 more looking at your classmates. Now, there's going to be some overlap. There's going to be some people picking the same ones, and that's not a big deal. Everybody's going to read and interpret them a little differently anyway, so that's fine. Lastly, the last assignment for this unit. So we're seeing a bunch of 6 different models and a bunch of different strategies, and we're going to start to apply them. So we've been developing a unit plan through the last few weeks. You started off just with a general idea, then you dug a little deeper and broke it into sub-ideas that would be individual lessons. So you have your big idea, and then you have your sub-ideas that make it up. Within that sub-idea, you establish some behavioral objectives and the standards that you're going to cover. Then we said, how are we going to assess these? And you applied formal and informal assessments to each one. And now we're going to decide what models and strategies apply to each individual lesson idea. So we're going to start thinking about, how would I actually teach this content? I have this content, I have these strategies that I'm learning about. Which ones fit with which? Which strategies would best allow me to reach the goals that I've established? So essentially what I'd like you to do is copy and paste the outline that you've been working on from the previous discussion board. Look at the feedback that you got from your peers, make any adjustments or edits that were required or suggested that you think you need, and then add to that outline the models and strategies for each lesson plan, for each individual lesson plan. That's going to take probably a little bit more time, and you're going to want to be exposed to all of these strategies and models that we were describing previously. But I would like you to comment on 2 classmates' posts on this one for a couple of reasons. It's nice to see other people's perspectives in the planning process, but it's also helpful to get feedback. I provide feedback as we go, or I try to, but it's more eyes means better feedback, right? More people seeing it, more perspectives. Every one of you comes to this class with a variety of backgrounds, and that background gives you a unique perspective that we can all benefit from. So I'm sharing some of the responsibility for helping guide the feedback by giving you the chance to look at and assess your peers' work. At least that's the idea. So as always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, good luck and good work so far.